Are you ready to get the hydrofacial glow? Loved in 87 countries across the world. It's not a facial, it's a hydrofacial. Now available across the UK. Visit hydrofacial.co.uk to find your nearest location.
But Tony Quinn was dark, moody, but he could be very kind. And he just, I think, was totally puzzled by me. And when I argued with him about things, he'd just look at me and say, "You're so goddamn English." That was his only answer when he disagreed.
Hello!
Hey!
We welcome the gorgeous Angie Greaves.
Oh, darling, we're all gorgeous, but I'll take that. I'll take that.
Yes,
Please do.
I've got to learn to accept compliments. How are you, wonderful Wonderbirds, today?
Oh,
good, darling.
brilliant.
Thank you. And you know I listen to you
you.
all. You know I listen to you all the time because I tell you.
Yes, you do, and you do me the odd tweet, and I get the odd little Insta post. And do you like cats, Harriet? I get the impression you like cats because you always there you go.
Yes.
Comment all the time about my lovely Milo and Mia. I've got these two cats. They're very.
I've got
naughty.
a 19-year-old Nellie who runs the household, who is terrifying. The dog's banana away from her. She's this big, but and they could take her out in a second, but they have no idea. They are terrified of the cat. I love her.
Something about cats, isn't they?
They love you for 5 minutes and then they swipe you the next. I can't get enough.
That's very true.
Milo and Mia are great names, actually.
Beautiful. So Milo's a ginger Tom. He's about 4. Mia is she's, well, they call her tortoiseshell now. My day they used to call her Tabby. She's about 1. So we got her just before it was kind of that cut-off point for Milo, and we were a bit nervous about bringing Mia into the house. So I don't know if you ever follow a guy on YouTube called Jackson Galaxy. He's like a cat whisperer. I think he was a cat in his former life. And we just took these steps as to how to incorporate Mia into the house, and they're now thick as thieves. I wish that they now plot against me. You know what I mean? They just...
Have you got any pictures there, dear?
Would you like to?
Yes,
please.
We'd love to see. I've got to say it, but we'd love to see pictures of your pussy.
Let's take that a little bit easy.
Debbie.
Well, look, that's Milo there.
Heaven.
That's Milo. Yeah. I'm going to show you now. That was laundry day. And I put this on Instagram. You know, can you move, please? Because I'm trying to do the laundry. And then I put Milo says, "Okay, Ange," after I've given Mia her shower. So yeah, I know. I think when your kids grow up, you get fur babies, don't you? That's what I did.
Absolutely.
Yes, mine are a canine as opposed to feline. But, you know,
I do both. I'm afraid I don't judge. I do both.
You do.
And how do you incorporate the feline and the canine? Do they talk?
They all get on, and I also Insta. They all sleep on the same sofa. They all, they drive each other a bit mad, but they all they're together. It's family. Yeah. They have to get on. That's the rule of my house. Everyone has to.
Tell us about your book club.
Well, oh my gosh, I've got this thing about books.
Me too.
I can't put my finger on it. Years ago, I was in the States. I'd had a fairly bad breakup, and a mate of mine said to me, on the way to the airport, "I want you to stop and get a book. You're not going to shed another tear about this man. That is it." Anyway, I go into this bookshop and I pick up this. Actually, I should have had it here, shouldn't I? Oh!
By chance.
By chance. It's called Acts of Faith, Daily Meditations for People of Colour, but it's just daily meditations. And it's by Ian Van Zandt, who used to be on the Oprah Winfrey Show. So I'm, getting this book and I'm thinking, right, this looks pretty. Let me pick it up. I swear to you, it was like a gust of wind blew this book out of my hand. When I picked it up, it landed on the page that said, "Would you marry you?" And I was like, oh my gosh, No, I wouldn't. And the essence was, well, if you wouldn't marry yourself, why are you palming yourself off onto somebody else if you don't like yourself enough to marry yourself? Anyway, I really got into reading, and I used to read a page a day on the radio station I was on at the time, Choice FM. And somehow someone from the States was listening in London, called Leanne Van Zandt and said, you need to get hold of this girl, Angie Greaves, in London, because she's reading about your book. And then I just became not obsessed with books, they became my friends. And even though I have a Kindle, I use the Kindle when I go on holiday because you can download 3-4 books and you're just carrying one Kindle as opposed to carrying 3-4 books. But I just love getting into the minds of authors, whether it is a Marianne Keyes, whether it was, unfortunately, he's now passed away, Eric Jerome Dickey, whether it was a Jackie Collins. I just love talking to authors. So shall we bring our author in?
Yes.
Well,
Yes,
Angie,
please.
tell us who we're bringing in.
We are talking to Jane McCulloch. Shall we talk to Jane? Come on now, Jane. Let's hear from you. Let's feel your presence.
Yeah.
There she is.
Oh, Jane, hi.
Hi. Hello.
Can I just say, I have a passion when it comes to talking to authors because, and let me ask you first, do you have an assigned place where you write, or do you write wherever the mood takes you?
What an interesting question. I do have an assigned place.
Okay. May I ask where that place is? I'm not getting in your business. Is it the bedroom? Is it the living room? Is it the kitchen?
It's in my living room, but actually I have a sort of open plan area. So the studio,
Right.
so that the bedroom is one side, because in the last 7 years, I've been through 5 operations on my ankle, which meant I was non-weight bearing. So I had to be on the bed. So that became my place but I mean, in actual fact, I've now been writing for novels for seven years. And yes, it's always in my place at home.
And do you find when you are in that place, your mind goes into either overdrive, the pen takes over, something happens in that place that wouldn't happen maybe on the train? So let's assume you was on the train and an idea came up. Maybe you'd quickly write that down, but it's in your assigned place where something just takes over.
Well, I love the way you put it. Most of my thinking and plot lines are done overnight. I'm an insomniac.
Okay.
And so once I'm into a book, I find it very difficult to sleep anyway. And I'm thinking up all the new lines and plot developments I'm going to work on the following day, so that when I sit down, and I become very disciplined, I sit down at 9 o'clock at my laptop.
Wow.
And then it's on with the show.
But you see, from that place, I'm going to assume the characters are all talking in your head and you're thinking, oh my God, am I going mad? But all these characters are talking in your head. The plot lines, it's like a road that you're just walking down. But from that assigned place, you engage with people all over the world who just tap into your writings. I just find that amazing. That's why I love authors.
Well, it is very exciting when you think what you write is being read, and it is being read all over the world. Because I've just had a fan letter from somebody in New Zealand. You know, it's a very amazing thought that the people you've conjured up and put into your book are meeting with some form of relationship all over the world, or maybe the English-speaking world, because I don't think I've had any translations done.
Not yet, darling.
I find it very difficult to lose them now, but this is the last in my trilogy now, and I'm missing the characters already.
And I just wanted to say, my mother was the novelist, Gillian Freeman, who then went on to
Oh my goodness,
went on to write movies and all sorts of ballets.
Yes.
But I remember going to sleep because she wrote at night. She'd look after us in the day, and when we were at school, she'd write. But at night, I remember going to sleep to the sound of her typewriter. And
That's
it's so interesting. That's the time. And she had a study, and it was just a place, a go-to place. It doesn't matter where it is, but
Yeah.
that's where, as you say, all those things manifest and evolve, and characters. And I was going to say, is it a sort of little twinkling of a story that you start with, or is it the character that you start with? What is it that starts?
I think with this particular one, it was the character, because I thought up this amazing character and I developed him as I went along. But he became fascinating to me because he was a sort of amalgam of all the men I've ever met, really. And I was determined to make him difficult but charming, you know, so there was that.
That's a rarity, darling. That's very good.
Well, I created this man and he's very believable. So I think hopefully, but it's interesting what you said about typing, because when I was writing for theatre, which is rather different from writing novels, but that was when I had small children as well. And that became, yes, I would work in the evenings because obviously, but I would think up during the day what I was going to write in the evenings.
Yes.
But writing for theatre is so different from writing.
Of course it is. When the character comes, is it the name? Is it what is it that's the first?
The name is terribly important. I mean, I don't know why it should be in so, but this particular character refused to use he'd been named Edwin by his mother, who loved Dickens, working class background, but his mother loved Dickens. So he was named Edwin. And at his sort of primary school, he just refused to be called Edwin. So he became Rawlings, which is his surname. And he only ever answered to Rawlings. That was a sort of gimmick in a way, but he's E.G. Rawlings as his war correspondent. He was a war correspondent. So
Jane,
yes,
thank you so much, darling, for coming on. And
I'm
Debbie.
thrilled to be on there. It's lovely.
Yes.
I love you four, and you did wonderful things during COVID. I may say.
Thank you. And I love Debbie as well. Your lovely lady.
Yes, isn't she lovely? Yeah,
she's absolutely gorgeous. Darling, I just wanted to ask you, because I found it so inspirational that you had a nasty accident, which most people would just give up. And you turned that into something sensational and positive and started writing novels when you were, may I say, when you were 75.
You may say it. And yes, it seemed like a good idea, but I had written for theatre.
Yes.
But I could no longer go in and direct what I was writing because I became static, if you know what I mean. So I then, yes, it seemed a very obvious thing to do was to write a novel. And in fact, I started in at the deep end with another trilogy, which that was how I started. But that was very much autobiographical in a way, and developing one woman's life. Now this latest one that I've written is quite different. And it's I had to do a lot of research. I had to do a lot of because a war correspondent covers wars, so you have to research that. And funnily enough, it covered this last book. They all stand on their own, each book, but this last book, which sort of draws all the other strands together, covers COVID years. And I had to go back and research COVID because I couldn't remember what order everything came in, you know, when we were first, it went into lockdown, and you know, it sort of leaves the memory. I remember not seeing people, but then I was stranded on a bed anyway. Yes. So in a way, but I had to do a lot of research for that.
Very interesting. And your career before that was amazing. I mean, you've worked with some incredible people, haven't you, Jane?
I've been terribly lucky. I think it's because I made a sort of gimmick of writing biographical dramas, which all started when I was married to Toby Robertson, who sadly is no longer with us, but he took over the Old Vic at a time when there were wonderful actors working in the company. Derek Jacobi, Eileen Atkins, Timothy West, the roll call goes on. And Toby suggested I write little vehicles for them, biographical dramas, so that they could show off their virtuosi acting, really. So I started with Byron for Derek Jacobi. and it went on from there. But that book, Byron, was so successful, and it went all over the world, and it led to meeting some other extraordinary people. And I got a bit of a reputation for writing these biographical dramas. So, for instance, Anthony Quinn commissioned me to write a play for him about Picasso. And working with him was quite an experience.
I bet.
He was not the easiest, unlike Margot Fontaine, who I also worked with, who was just divine. But Tony Quinn was dark, moody, but he could be very kind. And he just, I think, was totally puzzled by me. And when I argued with him about things, he'd just look at me and say, "You're so goddamn English." That was his only answer when he disagreed.
Oh, how fantastic. But Jane, you know, your life, you know, when you look back at things that you've done, I mean, it's almost like a fairy tale in itself, isn't it? How it all started.
You're very sweet, but there've been the ups and downs. I mean,
oh yes,
you know.
but when you name all the names and the people
I
and,
know.
and all the experiences, it's very, very surreal, isn't it? Because nowadays, I don't know if nowadays we have those massive stars, we have those, you know, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I sometimes did have to pinch myself. I mean, when I was at this, my children get at me for, she's name dropping again, but they're all absolutely true. I after a gala evening of the Byron, we were fundraising in New York for a library or something, and I found myself at the dinner afterwards sitting next to Jackie Onassis.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And there you go. And she was absolutely lovely, and rang me the next day and said, "We've got to work together." And we tried to on a biography of Jessie Norman, you know, the opera singer.
Mm.
But unfortunately, that didn't come to anything. But my friendship with Jackie went on till the end. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
And of course, you know, all the connections with everybody. I just think it's like it's so fantastic to have had that sort of experience in your lifetime. And I don't know now if there are any enormous stars, but let me go back to books, because I'm a book fanatic as well as Angie is. I mean, absolutely. I've got over 10,000 books. Wow. And I will never give.
Where'd you put them all?
Well, at the moment they're in storage because I moved and I haven't managed to get them all out, but I've got some of them out. But what I feel with all the books is that I remember reading every one of them and where it was that I read them and where it was, which time of my life that these things happened. So my books are all friends of mine. I mean, I've still got books that I had at boarding school, you know, Jean Plaidy, that I completely and utterly loved.
What book would you say made them really the most huge influence on you? And really?
Well, strangely enough, I think it was The Moon's a Balloon by David Niven.
Right. Well, a lovely, absolutely beautiful book.
Yeah, I loved it, but I wrote to him afterwards and I said to him, I just love this book. I loved it, and I want to be an actress. And he wrote back to me. Wow. And he said, "Hi, Debbie, you know, thank you for your lovely comments. You know, I will always be behind you if you ever need me, but good luck with your career." And that's what did it. And I was,
you know what,
16.
I really love that. You know, Judi Dench is another person that has helped so many of the young people that have written to her or you know, and moves into drama schools and helps the young actors. It's so nice to see that with the profession and, you know, handing down their expertise. That's great. Wow. Yes, I love that with your books. I've downsized, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately, I'm very happy where I am. But you know, you have to downsize, I think.
My daughter's just moved into another house, and she said, "Mummy, I need some books." And I went, "Great!"
You asked Debbie about what book did it for her. For me, I will say I was in school. It was around the time that my parents divorced, and I stopped reading. And my English teacher, who I'm still in contact with today, she gave me a book called That's How It Was by Maureen Duffy. And she said to me, "You read that book from cover to cover. Do not come back to me until you finish that book." And that really gave me a relationship with my English teacher that I wish all kids could have now, because the passion and the art for reading in schools is what it was. Now, there's something in schools at the moment called ERIC, Everybody Reading Class, and it's great. But there were times like, you know, we'd stop our English lesson and we'd all have to read, and everybody had to read out loud, and it was confidence building.
I think that's
and oh my God, it was like a skill that you created, and I'm convinced that's one of the reasons why I love my job so much.
My daughter, Kira, the eldest one, when she was about 3 or 4, she read really, really well. And she started, you know, she was already doing voiceover. She'd already done her own radio play for the BBC when she was 4, a monologue.
My goodness,
that's another story. But anyway, so when she went to school, nobody could read very well. And she came back one night and she started to read her book to me. And she was reading like that. And I went, why are you reading like that? That's not how you read. And she went, well, every time everybody reads at school, she says, well done. And when I read, she never says, well done. Oh. So she had stopped someone who read beautifully in all different ways and made her read like that because she thought that was the way to read. Oh, so it's interesting that it is, but not saying.
But I do think at this moment in our lives, reading books are so important because of everything that's going on outside. And if children and adults can lose themselves for just a little while in a book, and I try and make my books very readable. I use quite a lot of dialogue because I think that comes from writing for the theatre, but I also move the plot on, and which, you know, people say you must write a page turner. Well, whether it's a page turner or not, I like to keep the plot moving so that you really want to know. And I think it's important that, particularly with children, if they get a huge tome, they feel bewildered by it. And it's good if you can have a book that everyone can find accessible, you know.
Do you know, when I was 13, Jane, The Diary of Anne Frank was the first proper book that I read. And that, to me, that set me off to read other novels. I mean, and you know, obviously, that was a very compelling,
quite traumatic book.
Yes,
to read. I mean, I remember being read to at about the age of 6. I was at boarding school. Yeah. And Jane Eyre, it just completely destroyed me. I was sobbing in my bed later. But I think one of the books I really loved was I Captured the Castle, because I read it when I was about 12, and it was the first really romantic book that I'd read, and it opened up romance in a different way for me. But I mean, there were so many books. Why I asked what book particularly, I mean, it's interesting that if you had parents divorcing or somebody sick, or Diary of Anne Frank opening up history and things, these books can make a terrific impact.
I'm dyslexic, so reading a book was always stressful to me.
Oh, I have a dyslexic daughter.
And the irony of having a mother as a writer and you're dyslexic is mad. But again, reading around the class was so terrifying because I knew I was going to be shamed and get it wrong. What's important is I remember there are things that when I started to read as a teenager, Wilkie Collins I just adored, and then but things like my mother, because Maureen Duffy was a friend of my mum's, obviously. Same era. So it was, but I remember reading The L-Shaped Room and various things like that, which I found life-changing. And you know, just the contemporary things of the day in the 70s, the liberation of women, the vibrancy, those things mattered so much.
Can I just say?
Yes.
You've had some fantastic reviews.
I've had some lovely reviews and from some other nice people. I mean, I must say, Giles has written on the front of all 3 books.
Yes. Can I just read Giles?
Yeah.
Love, lust, heartache, humour, humanity, and a great story. Who could ask for anything more? Giles Brandreth.
Yay!
Yay!
Bless his heart.
He's got a lot more as well, but you have to buy the book.
Well, I hope people do, because when you think a book, a paperback, is the cost of 2 cups of high street coffee, or
Yes.
you know,
Starbucks.
and the pleasure can go on for so much longer. I don't read other people's novels when I'm in the full blast of writing my own, but I worry that I'll pick up other people's area of
Yes.
line style. It's quite easy if you have an ear for these things to pick up their sort of way of writing. So yes, but the actual writing, the book doesn't take me very long.
No.
So, but the thinking about it, the planning, takes
Is that the
a
process
very long
of it?
time.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Love it.
Jane, you're absolutely fantastic, and
you asked me.
so
How
many.
lovely of you all to be there, and
It's our honour to have you here, darling.
It
oh
really
no,
is.
don't be silly.
I'd love you to
Asking
come back.
such lovely questions too.
Yeah, I think
Thank
you'd
you.
be. I'd love you to come back and see us again.
Oh,
Lovely
I
to
hope
see
so.
you.
Bless you all.
What an inspirational woman.
Harriet,
Oh,
Harriet,
absolutely.
your mother knew Maureen Duffy.
And Margaret Drabble and all those people, and Bridget Brophy. It was a liberation movement in the 60s, 70s, when those women wrote stories that hadn't been heard before.
Yes. Because I remember my English teacher, her name's Denise Reed. I'm going to actually call her after this and say, oh my God. Because honestly, my English teacher became my oratory driver, if that makes sense. My dad was a walking dictionary, and I'm convinced I do radio now because of my dad. So when he left the home, I felt something for me had cut off. And it was almost as though my English teacher saw that, and she just stepped in and she said, you will read this book. She said, and I don't want to hear anything from you in class until you have finished this book. And I can just remember reading about a woman's, female experiences, which at the time, people just didn't talk about. And it was such an awesome book. And Margaret Drabble's one of my mum's favourite authors.
So Angie, when is your book thing on? When is your book?
Right. Well, I started this book club when I worked at Magic, and then I was advised not to put it on Smooth, but if it's got Angie's DNA, just slowly. So I record some of the interviews. I'm just about to start putting them out. So I've just got my YouTube channel up. So it's something that's I'm not rushing to do. It's not something that I'm looking for millions and thousands of views at first. Slowly. So I'm going to start to release one interview probably every 2 weeks. And you know what? You ladies have driven me to just get on with it now. Just get on with it now. Reading it's such a passionate thing. You were saying to Jane, Debbie, that with certain books, you can remember where you were, what you were doing. You see, for me, because I'm wired for sound, for me, that's where music comes in. I can remember where I first heard Bob Marley, No Woman. I can remember where I first heard certain songs. And for me, it's the author, when I meet the author, and when they say, I sit in this corner of the room and I write, and I just go, wow, from that corner of the room, there are people all over the world reading your works, just like a singer sings in a studio and people all over the world then listen to their music. It's just a gift, and I just think it's amazing.
Oh, Angie, can I just ask you, because I listen to you a lot on Smooth.
Yeah.
Just tell the viewers, what time are you on every day?
So I go live 4 o'clock until 7, Monday through Friday. This is my National Drive show. And then on a Sunday, 10 a.m. till 1, it's something called the Sunday Morning Vibe. And that's where I just provide the soundtrack. You tell me what you're doing.
Amazing.
And it just works, doesn't it, Harriet? Because you're always messaging me. I don't know why it works. I think Monday to Friday, because people are picking up the kids from school, dropping them off at after school clubs. Oh my goodness, what's happening on the M25? What's happening on the M1? So you just want the music really to cushion what you're doing.
Well, Angie, I want to have dinner with you soon, please.
Anytime. I love eating.
Lovely.
Me too.
We'll do that again.
Let's do it. Yeah.
And thank you. And we will see you on Friday.
Yeah, see you Friday, darling.
Definitely.
Thank
Nice
you,
one.
darling.
Take care, ladies.
Lots of love.